Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever the case may be. Finally, ¿qué tal? Yeah. We are back. Guys, it is 2 weeks and 2 days, 2 weeks and 3 days after the last vlog where I climbed that crazy ass mountain with my brother. So much stuff has went down since then, so I'm just gonna start going over it chronologically to bring you guys up to speed as I take you through the mean streets of Mexico City. Alright, so we did that mountain, and it's safe to say I had never done anything as crazy as that in my life. And also physically, I went above and beyond in terms of just extending my body to go to those lengths to make it. Because that's the thing about like climbing a mountain like that. There's no breaks, there's no timeouts. It's not a Navy. You have to do it, because if at some point you're no longer able to do it, you're fucked. Like literally the only option that you have is to get a helicopter up there to come and get your ass, and needless to say, that would cost a fortune. And you don't do that unless you're like literally dying, you know, on a mountain peak. So, and like with a lot of mountains, you have these so-called Almen, which is a German word, which basically means it's like a hut. Like you can go to these like huts, so then you can get medical attention, or you can stay there and rest and recharge or eat or whatever the case may be. But in that particular case, the Rotestein that we climbed, there wasn't any huts, so it's as hard mentally as it is physically. When you leave, you have to understand that there's no turning back. Like you can't even have that option in your head. So I say all that to say, it was a particularly hot day. I ran out of water pretty soon, so I was drinking glacier water, which really was snow water, which is a different thing. And I was just exposed to an extremely high degree of sunshine the entire day. And you know, when I was climbing to the peak, I got so scared, and the adrenaline just took over, and your body just goes kind of numb. So this is all a very long-winded way to fill you in on what happened. So when we made it down, I got back to the hotel with my brother and immediately hammered back some celebratory beers. You know, as you do after you've conquered the mountain. But then, strangely enough, you would think like that the hunger would kick in, as I hadn't really eaten since the morning, right? But it didn't. The hunger never kicked in. I never got hungry. So that was my first cue that something was a little bit off. And then as I tried to go to sleep after being extremely exhausted, I couldn't sleep. Like, no matter what I did, I was not able to fall asleep or to even feel tired. And at the time, I chalked it up to the adrenaline, you know? I figured, because I really did have a crazy adrenaline boost. By the way, guys, quick intermezzo. This right here is the place where you gotta be. Para el mejor caldo de gallina, la gente tiene que ir aquí.
Sí,
El mejor,
esperamos con mucho gusto.
sí, es muy rico, muy barato y la mejor gente aquí. Entonces, Luis
Caldos de gallina.
Luis Caldos de Gallina. Guys, I go to this spot almost every day. 100 pesos will get you a big bowl chicken soup, garbanzos, which is beans, rice. It's delicious. It's super local. All right, then, nos vemos. Ciao. So, seriously, go check that out. It's amazing and it's super cheap. So like I couldn't sleep. I figured it was the adrenaline. And then I woke up the next day and we basically had to drive back to Belgium, and I was driving with my parents, so needless to say, I felt responsible for doing most of the driving. So I did most of the 950 kilometers by car. So again, like I didn't really have a chance to, you know, self-diagnose and ask myself, how am I feeling today? So I just raced back home, got home, ate, basically went straight to bed, right? So now we're on Monday, Thursday, back at work after having a 7-day vacation. So again, a lot of like stuff to catch up, a lot of urgency, a lot of stuff on my mind. I was quite stressed that day. I particularly remember being stressed out that Monday, having a ton of work to do, and just like, you know, racing through the day and not really being conscious of myself, my mental state, my physical state. I remember not being that hungry throughout the day, but again, did not think anything of it. I was just in the rush, you know. I was still on the high from the vacation, on the high of having conquered that mountain, and just being back in the swing of things at work. And you know, I'm a diligent employee. Like whenever I get back to the job, like I really take it seriously, and I try to like really make sure that I am all the way caught up on everything. So Monday, the day is over. I go to bed, and around 2 a.m. I wake up, and I just like sit up in my bed in my dark ass room, and I'm like, something's off. Like I don't know what's going on, and I just felt my food, my dinner, being all the way up to here. And I ran to the bathroom and I just had to puke like crazy, just vomiting like The Exorcist. That happened a few times, and then quickly after that, a very extreme case of diarrhea ensued. Now basically, fast forward to the next 6 days, I just broke down. Like, that was the accumulation of the jet lag, having had touchdown in Belgium from Mexico, continuing to work abroad on the Mexican time schedule, racing to Austria, having a super active family vacation, topped off by the most extreme mountain I ever climbed, then topped off by racing back to Belgium by car, and just never taken a moment, you know, to give myself some rest. And my body finally said, hold up, wait a minute, you need to chill the fuck out. And it just turned me off. So for the next 5 days, I was just sick on the couch. I had to cancel all my social plans. Couldn't meet anyone because I needed all the little tiny bit of energy I had to do my job, because I was still on the job. And the last thing I wanted to do was call in sick after a vacation whilst being granted permission to work from abroad. Like, I didn't want to fuck it up for the future, so I just, you know, I was like, I gotta stay on the job, but then that means everything else has to go. So my entire third week in Belgium, I was just basically sick. And I literally could not eat. Now this is a segue into the next topic. So, didn't eat for 5 days, and when I say didn't eat, I mean did not eat. I couldn't eat, diarrhea, vomiting, all that stuff, and just having no appetite. So, I lost about 4 kilograms. I went from 96 to 92 in the span of 5 days. Obviously, that's a lot of water weight, a lot of glycogen, and all that. And it just kind of, you know, I try to look at the situation rationally, try to do what I always do, which is to try and convert any type of negative into a potential positive. And it had been on my mind for a minute, more than a minute, to finally do a cut, to cut down. I've basically been bulking for the past 2.5 years. Basically, ever since for the OG watchers, ever since I did the Building a New Body series with my ex-girlfriend Katya, where I followed Friesman's diet plan to cut down, ever since then, which I think might have been 3 years by now, I've been on a bulk, just building muscle. And I've definitely enjoyed the exercise, the strength gains, and just being and looking massive. But it had gotten to a point where I just feel like I'm not, you know, I just feel like I have too much body fat. I have too much of the gut. I don't have enough striations. I'm just big and massive, but I really, really wanted to cut down for a minute already. So I just looked at me having lost all that weight by being sick as a way to jumpstart my cut and just get a head start. Now, the science behind that isn't really that solid. Like, I'm not saying that's really the way you should do it, but that's how I looked at it, right? So I came back to Mexico last week, Monday, flew to London, and then from London to Mexico City. And I also feel like I'm getting a little bit more used to these long ass flights. Like, somehow I feel like it's starting to kind of like grow on me. Like, it's no longer that devastating. Like, even when I got back, the jet lag was really only bad for like 2 or 3 days, which before it like lasted way longer. So that's positive. And the main thing, you know, like, I'm so happy having elected not to go to that new place just to get my money back. I was so happy to be able to come home to the spot I had been staying in the previous 3 months. Like, it really felt like coming home. And I was a little bit weary of that. Like, I had such a good time in Belgium, seeing all my friends and family, and where I live in June, July, it's just the best time of the year because it's actually nice and sunny and warm. So I was like, man, I hope I don't get back to Mexico and feel all depressed, like, you know, like feeling like I want to be back in Belgium. But it wasn't the case. Like, 3 weeks, of which 1 week was Austria, was definitely sufficient. So I got back and I just immediately picked right back up where I left off. And more importantly than that, I feel like all the work I put in those first 3 months, like in terms of trying to build a social life, trying to build relationships and nurture those. And you guys remember, like, those first 5-6 videos, like how often I felt like shit, how often I felt really like exhausted, and I was like, man, what am I doing? You know, I'm so glad I documented that. I'm so glad that I showed you guys that, because I got back and just immediately I began reaping the benefits, you know, like, how do you say that? Fuck. I immediately began to reap the fruits of my labor. That's not reap. There's another word for it. Why am I blanking? Harvest the fruits of my labor, I guess. Just like people are reaching out, it's like, oh, you're back, let's do this, let's do that. So it's been awesome. Like, I've just had the greatest 9 days since I got back, and I've really doubled down on the cut. Like, I'm really trying to diet as hard as I can. I dieted a little bit too hard in the first 4 or 5 days, where I got to a point where it was hard for me to even work out. I was just going too low in carbs. And this might get some criticism, but I decided to do it. Like, I feel like after all of those years, I feel like, and I might be wrong, I feel like I know my body well enough to be able to do it by feel. So I'm not counting calories, I'm not tracking macros, I'm literally just trying to keep my protein intake as high as I possibly can, whilst keeping carbohydrates as low as I possibly can. And if I feel like I'm getting too low, if I feel like I'm getting too fatigued, too irritated, too depleted, I just up the carbs. And honestly, you probably shouldn't do it like that, because like eyeballing it is not the way to go. But I've been at this now for such a long time. That's just the kind of the way, you know, I want to do it, and I'm just like very determined to do it that way. Now let's see what happens. So I was looking at I bought a new phone, right? I bought a new Samsung S23 Plus. My last phone was a Samsung S10 Plus. And by switching phones, I had to archive some old Instagram videos. And I was looking at my physique 3 years ago, right before the cut, actually, ironically. And I felt like that was like my peak body. I just had like very low body fat whilst having nice round muscles. Looking back on it, that cut really wasn't the greatest idea. I was already in really good shape, I just had to maintain. I definitely hurt myself and destroyed some muscle doing that, but, and not to put it on her, but I do remember doing it because Katya at the time wanted to try it. She had no experience with it, and she wanted to get in the best shape of her life. And I was just like, well, you know, like, we'll do it together. And I'm glad I did it, but, you know, for us, I'm glad I did it. And to this day, it was an amazing experience. But for me personally, selfishly, it wasn't the right move, because my body was actually the best it had ever been right before that cut. And I'll put some of the videos up in here so you can see what I'm talking about, but for me, there's no question. And just looking at my physique back then, it really made me realize that that is where I want to go towards once again. Just want to be more lean again, more striated, more like flat stomach, abs showing. And with all the muscle I've put on in the last 2.5 years, theoretically, I should look better than ever if I can just do it right and shed my fat. Now, to help myself in that process, since I'm not tracking macros, since I'm not counting calories, obviously, I do need some type of tracking device. You know, you can't just completely wing it. So what I did was, I bought one of those electronic scales from Amazon that measure your body composition and that tell you your body fat percentage. Now, relax, guys. I'm very much aware that these devices are obviously not accurate as it pertains to body fat percentage and all that. If you want to really know your body fat percentage, you should do a DEXA scan. But the reason I'm using it is because I just need a benchmark. So in that regard, it is useful. If now I have a benchmark of the percentage of fat and my weight and all of that, and if I just keep using the same scale, I'll be able to track whether or not I'm losing weight and fat or not, because it is the same, you know, it's the same scale. Now, on the topic of, you know, the stats from my scale, so I started yesterday, and it sent me, oh shit, I gotta go check this place out sometime. Some jerseys here. Never seen that store. NBA jerseys now. I'm a sucker for an NBA jersey, as you can tell. Didn't even realize that, but I was wearing it. So I did, you know, I stepped on the scale and I checked my stats, and boy was it depressing. So the scale told me that I have the body of a 40-year-old. Yeah, it does that. Like, it tells you how old your body really is, like in terms of like the composition and all that. So 40 years old, really? And apparently I currently have a body fat percentage of 23.5%, which is kind of crazy, not to say insane. Like, 23.5% is fucking wild. So let's say the scale is off by 5%, that would still put me at 18.5%, which is way too much. So, I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm not lean, I'm not, you know, obviously, but 23.5, so like, I'm not gonna lie, that fucked with me a lot. So, I'm more hungry than ever, more, you know, I've been trying to do these mini cuts for the past year, and I never took it seriously, and I never persevered, and it's really getting to a point where I have gotten super irritated and annoyed with myself about announcing it to myself and then just not following through. So this is it, no more fucking excuses. If I don't get it, if I don't push through this time, I'm never doing it. 35 years old, after 2.5 years of bulking, it's a great moment to do a body recomposition, get lean again, and try to get in the best shape of my life. Also, I've cut out alcohol. I'm on day 9 of no alcohol. There's just no way that you can do a serious cut whilst still drinking. Last Friday, I was at an amazing birthday party, and obviously everybody was drinking and having delicious food, but I just said no. I brought my own bottle of sparkling water, and that's all I had. So I'm locked in, man. And it's hard in that moment. It's so hard on that Friday night, but then like the following days,